Hey guys, Brian Beeler coming to you again from the Storage View Lab. We're playing around again with this microserver from HPE. This is the Gen 10 Plus. We've already done a hardware teardown. We've shown you the drive bays, the connectivity, the RAM slots, where the CPU is, the neat little L-shaped heatsink. So we've done a lot of that already. But what we're doing today is getting the system prepped for testing for our review process. Now we are still waiting on one more RAM module, so we're going to add another 16 gig RAM module to this to get us to 32 for our testing. We're expecting that tomorrow, so we should be able to get the benchmark process rolling very soon. Until then, though, we're going to do a couple things. We're going to take off the lid, pull the tray out, and put in NIC in the PCIe Gen 3 slot that's on this board. Now, HPE officially supports 10 gig, and they'll sell you 10 gig NIC, and that's great. In fact, it'll be wonderful for most people that are using this server. And even then, if you're using hard drives in here, you'll probably get by just fine with the onboard gigabit NIC ports that are there. We're going to put a 25 gig card in there and hope it works. It should work. We expect it to work, but you never know until you actually do these things. We're going to do that. We're going to check on the SSDs that are already in here. If you follow us on Instagram, you already have a preview of what we're doing there. And we're going to install ESXi. We're going to go with 6.7 U3. And we'll show that whole process today of everything hopefully working. To get started though, we're going to go ahead and get access to the insides of the unit. Now people will ask or think about, why do we want to do 25 gig in here? And if we think about it from a practical standpoint, you don't really need to, but we are going beyond practical because we've got some nice SSDs in here. So we want to make sure that even with the SATA drives we have in here, if we're going to get 550 megabytes per second times 4, just sort of depending on what we're doing with it, we just don't want to have the network be any blocking factor. The other thing is that our entire infrastructure in the main lab is 10G or 25G for existing servers and storage. So if we want to use this as a load gen against another array, something like that, 25 gig will come in handy there. So let's see, we've gone ahead and popped that off. Take the bezel off too. And so, as you can hopefully peek in there, we've got 4 Hynix 2 terabyte drives in there. So we're going to have 8 terabytes of flash available to us. Now we're using the HPE software RAID controller, and that's actually going to work out really well for us because it'll just pass through those 4 drives individually to VMware. From there, we'll use VMware to do what we want with the SSDs, and that's perfect. If we had a software RAID on this, VMware wouldn't see it. It's a Windows-only thing. So if you want to use a RAID on the box, you'd have to use the hardware RAID card, which again takes up your PCIe slot, so we couldn't have the 25 gig. As it stands, this is the best of all the worlds, I suppose, and what we're trying to do here. We'll have the 4 drives, they'll present themselves to VMware, which is great, and then we still have our expansion card for the 25 gig card. So what we've got actually is a Mellanox card. This guy is their ConnectX-4. It's got 2 25 gig ports on it. It also has the larger adapter, just as a point of procedure. You can see we've got the reduced height slot here. So we're going to switch this out and put on the included small bracket. And that'll make it ready to roll for this slot. So while I do this, we're going to get the card ready and then adjust the shot a little tighter on this board so you can see what we're doing. So we've gone ahead, I've got the short bracket on our ConnectX-4 card from Mellanox. We've already removed the screws here so we can just slide this tray out. I really do enjoy how it just slides out like that. Pretty cool. So we'll pull out this one screw that holds in the bracket. Interestingly enough, there's also a little bonus screw on there in the event that you need it. And this Mellanox card should just slot right in there. Get them all lined up. And a little bit of pressure, and it's in. We'll secure this screw back in to hold the card in place. And then we'll put the body back together. Like I said, we'll do this one more time tomorrow, hopefully, when that RAM module shows up. And we did mess around with a couple other RAM modules and couldn't get them to take, which is not terribly surprising, but getting that second DIMM in from HPE and taking it up to 32 should be beneficial. So we'll go ahead and put this together. The next thing we're going to do, actually before I do that, so now you can see we've got our 2 ports on the back and ready to go, which is great. So we're going to go ahead and put it back together. I'll get the front on, the body on, and then let's go ahead and connect it, power it on, and make sure it boots properly with the new card in there and everything looks good. We've connected the Gen 10 Plus to a monitor and keyboard and mouse. Let's just take a quick look. We're not going to try to do anything terribly fancy here. I just want to make sure the system boots, that it sees our storage, and that everything starts to look okay. And we've hit it. It starts with the memory initialization as usual. Sadly, it doesn't get his own little graphic there. It gets the HP default, but you know, what are you going to do? So again, all we want to do is just make sure that the system doesn't throw any errors. We've done a lot of manipulation inside the system. We've put the SSDs in there, and they're not exactly in caddies. They're just kind of dangling there. So, you know, just in terms of best practices, we don't always follow those in the lab because, you know, it's a lab and that's how it goes. But so it's scrolling through, got the PCIe card initialized, which is a good starting point. We'll go ahead and drop into the BIOS here in a second. We've got our processor, 16 gig of RAM. I can't wait till that says 32. But anyway, our CPU's here, 4-core, 2224 at 3.4 gigahertz. So everything looks good here so far. All right, just a quick check of everything here. I do want to go into our system information and just for fun, make sure our storage devices are here. So yeah, we've got our 1.9 terabyte SSDs, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we're all good there. The PCIe card we know checked in. I'm not sure that there's going to be a lot of really great and useful information in here other than those are all the network settings. Yeah, not a lot here that's going to be helpful for us other than we've got, we do have the device, here's our slot recognized, and so that's great. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to get an ISO set up, install ESXi on this system, get VMware operational, and then go to the next level. All right, we've brought up our microserver. We put it in the lab. So when we stopped last time, we just verified that drives were there, that the NIC was there, and everything was looking great. Kevin's joining me now in the podcast studio as we log into ILO Essentials on the microserver Gen 10 Plus to take a look at what we see there and to continue on our journey with installing ESXi. Kevin, having ILO, even the light Essentials version in a microserver like this is kind of nice from a management standpoint.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about connecting a crash cart. You don't have to worry about USB thumb drives to install your operating system. It really lets you get the thing set up and just you can walk away and handle it from a quieter room and nicer desktop.
Yeah, and ILO support in this microserver was really important to HPE from what we understand, and really part of the driving reason why they went with Intel processors in this unit because it was they already had support for those in the ILO code base. So why don't you tell us what we're doing here as part of the ESXi install?
So we're loading up the HTML5 ILO remote console. We're going to attach one of the ISO files that is located on our desktop. And this is the ESXi 67U3. And we're going to turn this server on. And then while this is turning on, we'll get it going for the boot menu to make sure that it's selected as the primary device, so it loads into the installer.
For the ISO?
Yeah.
So it's not looking at the drives or the NICs or anything else?
Correct.
Okay. And so just like when we were looking at this before, it does take a little time to work through the memory check and the other system checks, but in just a moment the function keys will light up at the bottom and let us switch out that, or at least confirm the boot order.
Yeah, booting a server takes a little bit longer than a general desktop or a more simple device. It's really making sure the different subsystems are functioning the way they should be, and if things like the wrong type of memory or other devices are installed, it lets you know right away. And so we've gone ahead and pressed F11 for the boot menu, and in a few moments we should have the selection in front of us.
Yes, the famous "please wait, this may take a few moments," which could mean anywhere from seconds to infinity.
Yes. Moments, short or long.
Yes, technically still a moment, I suppose. Just lots of few moments added up into a while.
Okay, so here we see the virtual CD-ROM down the list. I'm going to select that, and it will load the ESXi installer.
All right. Now, it's been a little while since I've installed ESXi. I know you do it on a routine basis. Sort of walk us through what's going on here. So it's reading off the ISO at this point.
Yeah, it's a fairly small installer, so it's like 400 or 500 megabytes. It basically loads into DRAM of the server. So it loads in, and from that point can run the installer. And ESXi has a very small footprint for the hypervisor, so that's where you have a lot of the thumb drives and micro SD cards that it can be installed on, although you generally don't have write capabilities for logging on those types of devices for endurance. And
when was the last time this changed, or has it?
I started playing around with an ESXi 5, and I don't recall it changing much.
Just the same yellow bar, the same everything?
Yeah, the next screen that'll be coming up after this is one that'll show the version that's installing. Obviously, that changes, and
right.
Then the system that it's on will change. But it's a lot of the same underlying screens.
I guess if it's not broken,
don't fix it.
Right. And this isn't terribly intimidating. Anyone that's messed around with home labs has probably built up and destroyed more instances of ESXi than a lot of people, right? Because they've got some free trials or some other things you can mess around with, right? That's pretty.
Oh yeah, and the normal ESXi
with.
installer installs for 60 days with a license, and that's not just finding an eval copy. That's any version. It gives you a 60-day trial until you add the license on top of it. So in a lot of home lab scenarios or test dev environments, you'll find
tear down every 2 months.
Servers stood up for a particular test activity, tore down afterwards. Makes it kind of easy from that perspective.
So in terms of the underlying hardware ESXi needs for installation, it's not super picky, but HPE did validate this server for VMware and has the right cert, right?
Yeah, so a lot of it has to have the CPU installed, has to have virtualization support, and I believe having the Xeon processor was a requirement on the microserver to support VMware over the Pentium.
Right. Yeah.
And then at minimum, it's not really a problem on this platform, but it has to have a supported network device. Otherwise, you'll load up the installer and you'll get a nice screen that says either you don't have a supporting system with virtualization, or there's no network device, or you have no storage available to install it on. So there's certain minimum items that you need.
All right, we solved all those problems.
Yeah.
All right, there we go.
Yeah, at this stage, everything's operating in DRAM, and this is pretty much as fast as it will go. And for a lot of platforms, it will. For the slow servers, the fastest ones, this stage takes about the same amount of time.
Yeah, the only sad part is that we still have the 16 gig of memory, and we're hoping to solve that very soon with the second 16 gig module that should arrive shortly, and that'll let us do. You'll do the virtualization benchmark testing at that point once you have the best RAM footprint you can get in the system.
Yeah, and these do take UDIMMs, not RDIMMs, so if we don't have any extras in the lab that we could stick in, even if it wouldn't be certified. And here, the installer has loaded. And here it's going to scan over the internal storage, and I'm not sure if any of these drives have been used before in VMware, but
knowing us, they probably have.
yeah.
How many times? Oh, there you go. How many times have I gone to put some drives into a NAS and oh, look, there's already a system on these things.
Yeah, in most environments you probably don't have that happen, but it is a thing. It'll warn you before you overwrite. So in this area, we will select Install ESXi and overwrite the VMFS data store.
Right,
and select our keyboard.
Just as a reminder, while you're doing that, these are the Hynix SE4011s. They're SATA drive, 2 terabyte class drives. So we're working with ultimately about 8 terabytes of flash in this little box.
Yeah.
And we haven't even done anything funky yet, like put in SATA splitters or anything to get more drives in the system.
Yeah, and HP is really concerned on how they've qualled the platform. I think they list out for hard drives 4 terabyte 3.5 inch drives, and for flash 4 240 gigabyte drives. And I'm trying to think of the last time I saw a 240 gigabyte drive.
We just gave some away this past weekend.
True. I mean, we're up to I think we're holding on to the 2 terabyte and 4 terabyte and 8 terabyte drives.
Yeah. I think it just goes back to the cost profile of their typical user. So there's going to be several different camps that go after this MicroServer Gen10 Plus. It's going to be SMBs that just want something cost effective, easy to manage, that gets the job done.
Yeah.
They'll probably be fine with 4 terabytes per drive is probably even too much. I mean, a couple terabyte hard drives is probably sufficient for a lot of those use cases. And then you'll have home labbers or people like us that want to jam as much cool stuff into it as we can. The
kind of
qual,
like the
qual list,
25 gig card.
Yeah, qual list be damned. And then perhaps some larger distributed enterprises that might use these in some spot in between. But it's also one of those things where probably over time they'll see where the market goes and add more support. Maybe they'll add the ConnectX-4 after we're done here.
Yeah. So now the ESXi installation is complete. We'll click Enter to reboot, and then we'll get to our initial screen to set up networking. Okay, so now the ESXi installation is complete, and to log into it, we're going to make sure our correct network devices are set up. So VMware will go in and off the bat, if it sees a network device, it will usually try to do DHCP and grab onto something that's connected. In this case, we have a couple devices attached. So we're going to set up the network adapter and move it off of the onboard 1 gig and onto our 25 gig network. And with that comes a VLAN tag of 20. And in this case, we restart the management network, and we should get the IP address that will work in a couple of seconds.
Would it make you sad to be testing the SSDs over 1 gig?
Yes. Okay, so here we have our new DHCP address, and we'll connect onto that now.
Look at that, 41 in rain in Cincinnati. Typical day. February day. All right, so at this point, are we done with the ILO and the ESXi bootloader fellow?
Yeah, I mean, it is useful to look at thermals and other items, but from a testing perspective, we're able to move off into the world of ESXi and eventually into vCenter when we attach this into our normal data center environment.
Okay.
And here we can see, without the license, we get our 60-day trial for evaluation, and this is probably what most home labbers would see using this in a test dev environment. And from here, we'll hop into networking and get a quick look at our connection. See, here we can see we've established a 25 gigabit connection through our dual port ConnectX-4.
And it's nice to see that they're in there, they're reporting for something that's not on the official list.
Yeah.
looks okay, yeah?
And then we can look at our onboard storage devices. So we have one with a data store right now, and we can configure that, name them correctly, and get it all up and running.
Great. So what's your intention now? We've see all of our stuff. It's working. We know we're waiting for one more RAM DIMM before we get to work on testing. Is that the last trick, and then you'll provision storage? And
yeah, I'll make sure the VM kernels are set up to do vMotion, and probably attach in some ICSC storage now that we have a lot of fast access into our shared storage environment over the 25 gig fabric.
okay, well that gets us going on the next step of the MicroServer Gen10 Plus testing. We'll get to work on that as soon as we get the additional RAM in. And you could probably expect to hear more from us on this system next week, hopefully. So keep in tune, hit that subscribe button to keep up with what we're doing here at Storage Review. And until next time, thanks for watching.